2024 was the first year with Joe Burrow playing a full season that the Cincinnati Bengals did not make the playoffs. Now, in 2023, Joe Burrow played a majority of the year but ended on IR with that wrist injury. I think he only played 10 games that year. And it's back-to-back years of finishing 9-8 out of the playoffs and with a defense that definitely let them down. And the one thing I will say, I am happy that after this season, it wasn't just fire everyone possible, trade some of the top name players, and try to rebuild this team. That just wasn't what this team needed to do. For once, this team in 2025 needs to come into the year playing much better in September and October than they have. I mean, you look at the 3 games that they lost to start the year: New England at home, Kansas City on the road, even though, you can't really put all of that loss on Cincinnati due to some shady refereeing. But you look at starting 0-3 to start the year. You start at 1-4 to begin the year, and it just put them so far behind that they couldn't catch up. And even though they won 5 straight games to end the year, there really was almost no chance that this team was making the playoffs after the start that they had. One of the more important things that Cincinnati had on their plate this offseason was re-signing as many of their big-name guys as they could. And while it does seem that they have fallen a little bit flat when it comes to re-signing Trey Hendrickson and how they're dealing with that in the media, their re-signings of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins keep 2 of the top probably 10 receivers in the NFL, and in Jamar Chase's case, probably the best receiver in the NFL. Keeps both of those guys in Cincinnati for a long time and keeps that 3-headed monster between Chase, Burrow, and Higgins, keeps them all together for a long time. However, because of all the money that they gave out to Chase and Higgins, like I said, they already probably aren't able to get a deal done with Trey Hendrickson. There's some other players that are going to get signed away or not re-signed in the future. And it left the Cincinnati Bengals with not a lot of room in free agency this year to add to the team. However, they did add in some key areas. They add Oren Burks as a new member of the linebacking group. You have Lucas Patrick come in as a guy who can play guard or center. Samaje Perine, you bring him back for when this team was in the Super Bowl a few years ago. And TJ Slayton as a rotational defensive tackle. You also make re-signings for Cameron Sample and Joseph Asai at defensive end and Marco Wilson in the cornerback group. Again, nothing major, but the signings and re-signings that they did make, they were at key positions for this team to address. And so it just was probably a good move to bring these guys back or bring these signings in. And overall, like I said, nothing spectacular, but it keeps up with what they needed to do. Cincinnati's departures in free agency are highlighted by Alex Kappa, Sheldon Rankins, Trent Brown, and Akeem Davis-Gaither. 4 guys where you were relying on them last year, but, in Alex Kappa's case, he was one of the worst offensive linemen in the NFL. In Trent Brown's case, he was, as he usually is, injured. Sheldon Rankins, I love Sheldon Rankins. He signed with the Texans, and I just love Sheldon Rankins. So I'm always going to think that it's worse to lose that guy than it would have been to keep him. And Akeem Davis-Gaither, just a rotational linebacker, very fast, very agile. But again, this was a defense that was really bad. So if you're losing players from your defensive squad, I'm not really going to bat much of an eye about it unless it was, one of their top players like Hendrickson. It's not really a free agency loss, but Sam Hubbard retires, which was very surprising. So there's going to be probably a lot of youth and a lot of inexperience on the defensive line and on the defense in general, which brings us to the draft for Cincinnati. They have 6 picks overall. They have the 17 overall pick in the first round, and while it is a great idea to get one of the best edge rushers available, whether that's someone like Michael Williams, if it's somebody that they feel is better at that position, whatever they decide. It also would probably be a better idea to trade back and try to get more picks in day 2 and 3, even if you're trading back in the first round and you can pick up like a third or fourth round pick for it. That would be incredible value because this team just needs to add more talent defensively. I would look at like how the LA Rams addressed their defense the last couple of years. I mean, they spent 5 or 6 draft picks on guys in the defensive line, guys in the secondary, and because of that investment, the LA Rams were one of the best teams in the NFL last year and won a playoff game. And I really think that that's the best way to address what this team needs is trade back, get some guys in day 2 and 3, instead of trying to focus so heavily on hitting on that number 1 first round pick. Because, the first round picks, especially when you get into the range where Cincinnati is, it's really 50-50 whether or not those guys are going to pan out as really good players or as busts. Overall, Cincinnati didn't do a lot in free agency, so I can't really give them a grade that is super great, but I think that their main goal this year in the offseason was to try to keep the core together. Yes, they do lose, Sam Hubbard to retirement. They lose a couple of guys in free agency, and they did probably piss off Trey Hendrickson, and he was definitely the best defensive player on the team last year, led the NFL in sacks. I would not want to do anything to make that guy want to leave or request a trade or hold out. And so I think this is a B- free agency. Yes, they kept Chase. Yes, they kept Higgins. But again, they just didn't do much else. And it's hard to do much else when you have to spend so much money, over $260 million combined, to keep T. Higgins and to keep Jamar Chase on your team. But that's not really an excuse to have that be all you did. You can try to do other things. And I think Cincinnati is just kind of one of those teams where they get a good team and they want to stay good. And that's not a knock on them. That's just kind of how they're operating. And it's not the worst idea in the world. You get a good team, keep the good team together. But where they are salary-wise, where they are, I think, personnel-wise, I think they kind of hit their ceiling. Unless they make some dramatic changes with how their cap is orchestrated. But even then, it's not like they have a crazy amount of cap hit for specific players. You have Burrow, Higgins, and Chase all making $20+ million, and in Burrow's case, making about $46 million this year. But those are your 3 best players. That's kind of how the deal works. You pay your best players the most money. I just think Cincinnati, they're not going to do much more than they have this year. And it sucks because they still don't really have a running back. Yes, they have Chase Brown and they have Zach Moss, but that's not a full running back room. You have an offensive line that got, pretty picked apart last year. You have a defense that got picked apart last year, and you didn't make major changes or major additions to either of those groups. And so, it's a B- free agency period, in my opinion. It's really nothing great, but it wasn't the worst thing that Cincinnati did.